Welcome to Ethan's Revenge Domain.
He stood on the stage beneath the company's crystal anniversary banner, champagne glass raised, and thanked me with one breath before burying me with the next. "I want to recognize Trevor Castellano for his outstanding technical contributions this past year," he said, voice amplified through the sound system, projecting to every corner of the ballroom. His work stabilizing our platform was exactly what we needed during a critical transition. Polite applause. A few heads turned my way. Most didn't. Then he continued, smile widening for the camera's position near the investor tables. "But as Horizon Analytics enters its next chapter, we need more than technical excellence. We need visionary leadership. So effective today, I'm proud to announce that my son, Kyle, will be stepping into the role of Chief Technology Officer." The applause was louder this time. Programmed. The kind of clapping that happens when power changes hands in public, and everyone knows their job depends on appearing enthusiastic about it. Kyle stood beside his father at the podium, suit perfectly tailored, expression rehearsed into something that might pass for humility if you didn't know he'd spent the last 6 months shadowing me while learning almost nothing. He shook his father's hand. Photographers captured the moment. The company's future, framed in gold light and expensive staging. I stood near the back with the people who actually kept the servers running. Senior engineers who'd been there since the dark days. Operations staff who knew every client's pain points by memory. Support leads who fielded the angry calls at 2 a.m. when something broke. Behind the CEO, the projection screen showed a slide I had built 3 weeks ago for the board presentation. Bold white text on a dark blue background. From insolvency to $120 million ARR, a 14-month transformation, my architecture, my stabilization plan, my weekend spent rewriting core systems while everyone else was at brunch. My name wasn't anywhere on that slide. The CEO, Richard Hoffman, 58, Stanford MBA, serial turnaround specialist, kept talking. "A company doesn't achieve this kind of growth because of any single contributor," he said, gesturing broadly at the room. "It happens because of collective vision, disciplined execution, and leadership that understands where we're going, not just where we've been." Kyle nodded solemnly, as if he'd been in the trenches instead of in conference rooms asking questions like, "Can't we just add more servers to make it faster?" The applause died down. People began drifting toward the open bar, toward the catered stations with shrimp and sliders, toward the networking conversations that would determine who survived the next round of organizational efficiency improvements. By the time the crowd thinned near the stage, my decision was already made. I walked past the clusters of congratulations, past the executives toasting Kyle's promotion, past the HR team smiling their professional smiles. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. Their attention was locked on the celebration, on the future they'd just been told to believe in. Richard's office was on the top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that cost more than most people's cars. The door was half open. He was alone inside, jacket draped over his chair, tie loosened, pouring himself something amber from a crystal decanter. He looked up when I entered, smiled like we were old friends. "Trevor," he said warmly. "Hell of a night, right? You should be out there celebrating. You earned this as much as anyone." I closed the door behind me. "You told me results would speak for themselves," I said. "That performance would be the deciding factor." His smile didn't fade, but something in his posture shifted. He set down the decanter carefully. "And they did," he said. "You did incredible work, truly. But there's a difference between executing a recovery and leading a growth strategy. Kyle has the vision for where we need to go next." "Kyle has an MBA in your last name," I said. Richard sighed, the patient sigh of someone who's had this conversation before with other expendable experts who didn't understand how the game worked. "Trevor, you're a brilliant engineer. No one's disputing that, but leadership, real leadership, requires something more than technical skill. It requires presence, strategic thinking, the ability to inspire confidence in investors and board members." "I turned this company around in 14 months, I said. "While it was actively failing, you were weeks from shutting down when I started. And we're grateful," he said. "Genuinely, you'll be taken care of, don't worry." He opened his desk drawer, pulled out his wallet, thumbed through a few bills. Then he slid a single $50 note across the polished surface toward me. "This," he said, tapping it once with his index finger, "is what I think about gratitude and contributions and all those things people say in speeches." He leaned back in his chair, watching me. "This is your real value, Trevor. $50 and a good story for your LinkedIn. You should take it and be grateful you were part of something that succeeded." For a moment, I just stood there. I could hear the muffled sound of music from the ballroom 2 floors below. Laughter, glasses clicking. The low hum of the building's HVAC system pushing air through vents. I looked at the $50 bill, crisp, uncreased, worth less than the parking fees I'd racked up coming in on Saturdays to prevent outages Richard never knew were about to happen. I looked at him, at the satisfied expression of a man who thought he'd just closed a negotiation cleanly. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't give him the satisfaction of anger or desperation. I picked up the 50, folded it once, and slid it into my wallet. "Thank you," I said. He looked almost disappointed, like he'd expected more of a fight. "That's it?" he asked. "That's it." I walked out of his office, down the hallway, into the elevator, through the lobby where security nodded at me like every other night, out to the parking garage where my car sat under the fluorescent lights. Richard thought that meant he'd won, that I'd accepted his valuation and would quietly disappear into some other company's engineering department. What he didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that I hadn't walked out empty-handed. What he didn't understand was that the moment he announced Kyle as CTO without my written approval, Horizon Analytics had shifted from owning the platform that saved them to renting it on terms they'd never bothered to read. And the rent had just come due. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and show you exactly how a software architect with 15 years of experience and one carefully structured contract turned a $50 insult into the most expensive mistake a CEO ever made, and how one night of celebration became the morning they discovered that replaceable wasn't quite the word they thought it was. Before we go further, if you've ever watched someone take credit for your work, if you've ever been told to be grateful, while someone else collects the reward, if you've ever wondered whether quiet competence actually counts for anything, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to hear what happened the next morning when Richard and Kyle walked into the office and discovered what it actually costs to replace someone who built everything from the ground up. My name is Trevor Castellano. I'm 39 years old, and until yesterday, I was the person Horizon Analytics called when their entire platform was 30 minutes from total collapse. Horizon started as a data analytics firm serving mid-sized healthcare providers. For a while, they were good at what they did: clean dashboards, reliable reporting, clients who renewed without much drama. Then they got ambitious. They expanded into 3 new verticals in 18 months, signed contracts they couldn't technically fulfill, hired a sales team that promised features the engineering team didn't know existed, built custom integrations with duct tape and optimism. By the time I got the call, Horizon wasn't just struggling. They were dying in slow motion. Revenue was dropping 20% quarter over quarter. Their largest client had just served notice of contract termination due to persistent platform instability and repeated data integrity failures. 2 smaller clients had already left. 3 more were in active conversations with competitors. The platform itself was a disaster. 5 different subsystems that barely communicated. Manual data reconciliation processes that took analysts 4 hours every morning. Outages that happened so frequently they stopped calling them outages and started calling them intermittent degradation events. When Richard called me in for the interview, he was direct about the situation. "We're in trouble," he said, sliding a thin folder across the conference table. "Not we need to improve trouble. We're in we might not make it to Q3 trouble." I opened the folder. System uptime reports that looked like seismograph readings during an earthquake. Client satisfaction scores in the low 30s. SLA breach notifications stacked like court summons. "How long have you been operating like this?" I asked. 18 months, he said. "We've tried to fix it internally. Hired consultants, brought in a temp CTO who lasted 3 months before he quit without notice. Because the problem isn't fixable with consultants, I said. You've got foundational architecture rot. Every patch you apply makes the underlying structure weaker. He leaned forward. Can you fix it? I can rebuild it, I said. There's a difference. How long? 12 to 18 months if you give me actual authority. Longer if I have to negotiate every decision through committees. He nodded slowly. You'd report directly to me. Title would be Principal Systems Architect. Compensation is 160 base plus equity options. I waited. And authority, I asked. You'd have operational control over the technical stack, he said, then added within reasonable boundaries. That phrase, reasonable boundaries, was the first warning sign. I filed it away. I'm not interested in an employee position, I said. His eyebrows went up. You want contract. I want to structure this properly, I said. You need someone who can rebuild your platform without destroying continuity. I need to make sure I'm not walking into a situation where I fix everything and then get replaced by someone's nephew who took a coding boot camp. So what are you proposing? I build the new system through my own company, Castellano Systems. You license it. I maintain operational authority as long as the license is active. You get a stable platform. I get a business relationship with clear terms. Richard looked at his CFO, who'd been sitting quietly at the end of the table. That's unusual, the CFO said. So is your situation, I replied. You've got maybe 10 weeks before your biggest client walks and takes 3 others with them. You can spend those weeks negotiating a traditional employment agreement, or you can spend them letting me stop the bleeding. Richard made his decision fast. Desperation has a way of clarifying priorities. Fine, he said. Legal will draft something, but I need you to start immediately. I'll start, I said, the day I see signed contracts that protect both of us. It took 9 days to finalize the paperwork. The agreement between Horizon Analytics and Castellano Systems was 32 pages, but only 3 clauses really mattered. Section 3.1. Intellectual property, all software, architecture, and systems developed under this agreement remain the exclusive property of Castellano Systems. Horizon Analytics receives a non-exclusive, non-transferable license to use said systems for internal operations only. Section 3.2. Operational authority. Castellano Systems retains sole operational authority over platform architecture, deployment processes, and technical decision-making. Horizon Analytics may request modifications, but cannot unilaterally override technical decisions without documented risk acceptance signed by the Board of Directors. Section 7.4. Change of control and termination in the event that Horizon Analytics materially alters Castellano Systems' designated operational authority, or appoints another party to a role with overlapping technical authority without prior written consent from Castellano Systems. Castellano Systems reserves the right to a. Terminate the license with 90 days notice, or b. Transition the license to a limited access mode pending renegotiation. Richard's legal team pushed back on Section 7.4. This gives you too much leverage, the attorney said during our final review call. What if we need to make organizational changes? Then you discuss them with me first, I said. This clause exists because I've watched companies hire someone to fix a crisis, then push them out the moment things stabilize. I'm not building something just so you can hand it off to someone who doesn't understand it. We're not planning to do that, Richard said. Then the clause costs you nothing, I replied. They signed. I started 3 days later. The first month was triage. I spent 18-hour days inside their systems, tracing every failure path, documenting every brittle integration, mapping every place where someone had applied a temporary fix that became permanent infrastructure. This is worse than you described, I told Richard in our first weekly check-in. How bad? Your transaction processing layer is held together by a cron job that runs every 15 minutes. If it fails, and it fails about 30% of the time, data gets duplicated across client accounts. Your support team has been manually correcting this for months. Can you fix it? I can replace it, I said, but not while it's running. We're going to need a maintenance window. How long? 48 hours, full system down. He went pale. We can't afford 2 days of downtime. Clients will leave. They're leaving anyway, I said. Because your platform doesn't work, you can take 2 days of planned downtime with client communication and SLA credits, or you can wait for an unplanned failure that takes you down for a week. He authorized the maintenance window. We brought the system down on a Friday night. I rebuilt the transaction layer from scratch. By Sunday afternoon, it was back online, faster, cleaner, and stable. Monday morning, not a single error in the logs. Richard called me personally. "Trevor, I don't know what you did, but the transaction processing queue is empty for the first time in 2 years. I stopped using a cron job," I said, "built an actual event-driven processing pipeline. How long will it take to do this for the rest of the system? Depends on how many more temporary fixes I find." I found dozens. Month 2, I started seeing the pattern. Every time I fixed something foundational, 3 other systems stopped breaking. Support tickets dropped. Client complaints slowed to a trickle. The ops team started sleeping through the night. One of the senior engineers, a woman named Diane who'd been there since the beginning, pulled me aside after a deployment. "I just want to say thank you," she said. "I've been here 4 years. This is the first time I'm not terrified to come to work." "You're welcome," I said, "but it shouldn't have gotten this bad in the first place." "Previous leadership didn't prioritize infrastructure," she said carefully. "They prioritized growth. Growth on a broken foundation just means you collapse faster," she smiled. "That's what I kept telling them. They stopped listening after a while." By month 3, the turnaround was measurable. System uptime went from 63% to 98%. Client retention stabilized. The healthcare provider that had threatened to leave renewed their contract early with an expansion clause. Richard started mentioning me in board meetings, not by name, but in phrases like our technical stabilization initiative and infrastructure modernization efforts. By month 6, Horizon wasn't just stable, they were growing again. New clients signed on because they'd heard the platform was finally reliable. Referrals came in from existing customers who'd spent the previous year warning their colleagues to stay away. Revenue projections for the year shifted from survive to thrive. And that's when Kyle started showing up. I first saw him in a planning meeting I wasn't invited to, but ended up attending because someone needed to explain why a proposed feature would take 6 months, not 6 weeks. He was late 20s, expensive haircut, suit that looked tailored in a city that wasn't this one. He sat 2 chairs away from Richard at the head of the table, laptop open but not taking notes. "We need to think bigger," Kyle said during the conversation about our roadmap. "Incremental improvements are fine, but we should be positioning ourselves for exponential growth." I glanced at the slide on the screen, a feature request from a client that would require rewriting part of the data ingestion pipeline I just stabilized. "Bigger how?" I asked. He looked at me like I'd interrupted something important. "Visionary product strategy," he said. "Not just reacting to client requests, but anticipating market needs." "Do you know what the data ingestion pipeline does?" I asked. "Broadly, yes. Broadly isn't enough when you're proposing changes that could destabilize 6 months of work." His smile tightened. "I'm sure we can figure it out as we go." "No," I said, "we can't." Richard cleared his throat. "Trevor, let's keep this collaborative. Kyle's bringing a strategic perspective that's been missing." "What's been missing is a stable platform," I said, "which we finally have. If you want to keep it that way, strategy needs to account for technical reality." The meeting ended shortly after that. As people filed out, I heard Richard and Kyle talking in low voices near the door. "Good at what he does, but he's very binary," Richard was saying. "We need someone who can see the bigger picture," Kyle replied. I didn't react, just gathered my notes and left. But I started paying closer attention after that. Over the next few months, Kyle's presence became more frequent. He started sitting in on technical planning meetings, asking questions that sounded strategic but revealed he didn't understand the underlying systems. "Can't we just migrate to a microservices architecture?" he asked once. "We could," I said, "if you want to spend 18 months rewriting everything and introduce an entire new class of failure modes. Other companies do it. Other companies didn't just finish clawing their way back from the edge of insolvency." Richard started deferring to Kyle on prioritization decisions. Features I'd flagged as risky got greenlit because Kyle said they'd signal innovation to investors. I documented every objection, every risk assessment, Every time I said, "This will destabilize the platform," and was overruled. Then came the org chart announcement. It was buried in an internal memo on a Friday afternoon. As part of our continued growth and maturation as an organization, we're evolving our leadership structure. Kyle Hoffman will be joining Horizon Analytics as VP of Technology Strategy, working closely with senior technical leadership to align our product vision with market opportunities. No one asked me about it beforehand. Kyle's first day, he scheduled a one-on-one with me. "I want to make sure we're aligned," he said, sitting across from me in a conference room he'd booked without checking if I was available. "Aligned on what?" I asked. "On where we're going. My dad, Richard, has a lot of respect for what you've built here, but we need to start thinking beyond stabilization." "The platform is stable because we haven't broken it," I said. "The moment you start pushing changes without understanding the dependencies, we're back to where you started." "I'm not trying to break anything," Kyle said. "I'm trying to grow this company. Then grow it on a foundation that can handle the weight." He smiled the way people smile when they think you're not quite getting it. "I think we just have different perspectives on risk," he said. "I think I'm the one who has to fix it when your risks blow up at 2 in the morning," I replied. By month 12, Horizon Analytics had fully turned around. Revenue was up 94% year over year. Client retention hit 96%. Industry publications were writing about the company's remarkable recovery and disciplined execution. Richard was getting interview requests from business podcasts. Kyle was building a social media presence as a tech visionary. My name appeared in exactly 0 external communications. Internally, though, things were shifting. Diane came to me one afternoon, voice low. "They're planning something," she said. "Who?" "Richard and Kyle." I overheard part of a conversation, something about transitioning technical leadership and finding the right narrative. "When?" "Soon, maybe at the anniversary event." The anniversary event was 2 weeks away, a big celebration planned to mark Horizon's 15th year in business and conveniently their turnaround. "Thanks for the heads up," I said. She hesitated. "Trevor, if they try to push you out, we don't know how to run this without you." "You'll be fine," I said. "You're good at what you do." "That's not the same thing." She was right, but I didn't say that out loud. The night of the anniversary event, I knew exactly what was coming. I'd reviewed my contract that morning. Every clause, every contingency, every protection I'd built in because I'd seen this movie before. When Richard made the announcement on stage, thanking me in one sentence, replacing me in the next, I didn't react. I just watched. Watched Kyle accept congratulations for work he didn't do. Watched the crowd applaud a transition they didn't understand. Watched Richard pour himself a celebratory drink in his office while I stood in the doorway. And when he handed me that $50 bill and told me that was my real value, I took it. Because I knew something Richard didn't. That $50 wasn't an ending. It was a receipt. I drove home that night and didn't sleep. At 1:47 a.m., I was sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing the systems I'd built for Horizon Analytics. The platform they thought they owned. The platform that was licensed to them through Castellano Systems under very specific terms. Terms that included Section 7.4, the clause about changes to operational authority. At 2:03 a.m., I logged into the administrative console that only I had access to, the one that controlled licensing, authentication, and system-wide permissions for the entire Horizon platform. The status panel showed license status, active contract holder, Horizon Analytics Inc., operational authority, Trevor Castellano, Castellano Systems license renewal, 14 days modifications allowed. Yes, below that were 3 options most administrators never saw. Modify license terms, initiate restricted mode, revoke license. I didn't choose revoke. That wasn't the point. I clicked initiate restricted mode. A dialog box appeared. Restricted mode will limit platform access to read-only functions. All write operations, data processing, and automated workflows will be suspended. This action is typically used when contractual terms have been violated or when renegotiation is required. Confirm restriction. Yes, no. I clicked yes. Another prompt. Select restriction start time. I selected 9. 00 a.m., the time Richard usually arrived at the office. A final confirmation. Restricted mode will activate in 7 hours, 2 minutes. During this time, Horizon Analytics will retain read-only access to all data. No processing updates or client-facing operations will function until the license is restored to full access. I clicked confirm. Then I closed my laptop, poured a whiskey I didn't drink, and waited for morning. At 9:11 a.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Same number. Third time I answered. Trevor Castellano. Trevor, it's Richard. His voice was tight, controlled, but barely. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The platform isn't responding. Clients can't access dashboards. Processing queues are frozen. Our entire operations team is getting error messages. What do the messages say? I asked. Something about restricted access mode and license validation failure. That's correct. Silence on the other end. Then carefully. What do you mean, that's correct? I mean the platform transitioned to restricted mode at 9 a.m. as specified in Section 7.4 of our agreement. Section what? 7.4, I repeated. The clause about operational authority. You announced last night that Kyle was replacing me as CTO. That constitutes a material change to my operational authority without prior written consent, so the license automatically moved to restricted mode. His voice went up half an octave. You shut down our entire platform because of a contract clause. I didn't shut anything down, I said calmly. Your data is intact. You have full read access. You just can't write, process, or update anything. Trevor, we have clients depending on us. I know, I interrupted. I spent 14 months making sure they could depend on you, and last night you decided that was worth $50. I heard muffled voices in the background. Someone shouting about customer support lines lighting up. This is corporate sabotage, Richard said. This is contract enforcement, I replied. You signed an agreement that explicitly protected operational authority. You violated it. The system responded exactly as designed. We'll sue. You'll lose, I said, but feel free. Discovery should be interesting. I've documented every technical decision you overrode, every risk I warned you about, every time Kyle proposed something that would have broken the platform if I hadn't pushed back. More silence. Then a different voice on the line. Trevor, this is Kyle. He sounded younger on the phone, less confident. Look, we can work this out. Maybe there was a miscommunication about roles. There wasn't, I said. Your father was very clear. Visionary leadership. Next generation. $50. We need the platform back online. Then you need to honor the contract. What do you want? Kyle asked. I want you to read Section 7.4, I said. Then I want you to understand that you don't actually run anything. You never did. I hung up. By noon, 3 clients had sent emails directly to my personal address, not to Horizon, to me. Trevor, our dashboards are locked. If you've left Horizon, we need to talk immediately about transitioning our services. Whatever is happening over there, we want you on our account, not Horizon, you. If Trevor Castellano is no longer with Horizon Analytics, please forward this to him directly. We'd like to discuss moving our contract to wherever he's working now. I didn't respond yet, but I saved each one. At 2:47 p.m., Richard called again. We're willing to renegotiate, he said, no preamble this time. I'm listening. We need the platform back online today, whatever it takes. What are you offering? Kyle will step back from the CTO role. You'll retain operational authority. We'll formalize it in writing. Not enough, I said. What else do you want? First, a public correction. Internal announcement to all staff and external communication to clients that I remain Chief Systems Architect with full operational authority. Kyle can have whatever title you want as long as it doesn't touch production systems. Fine. Second, contract renegotiation. My licensing fee is increasing to reflect the actual value of what I built. You'll pay market rate for enterprise platform licensing, not the startup discount you got when you were desperate. How much? $400,000 annually, plus maintenance fees. He sucked in air through his teeth. That's almost triple what we're paying now. That's what it costs to run a platform that generated $120 million in revenue last year, I said. You can pay me or you can pay someone else to rebuild it from scratch, your choice. Anything else? Third, an apology in writing signed by you, acknowledging that your $50 valuation was insulting and incorrect. That's petty. So was the $50, I said, but I'm flexible. You can skip the apology and just add another $100,000 to the annual licensing fee. Call it a reputation recovery fee. Long silence. I could hear him breathing. If I agree to this, Richard finally said, how fast can you restore access? 30 minutes after I see signed agreements. I need to talk to the board. You have until 5 p.m., I said. After that, the licensing terms change again. I start fielding client calls directly and offering to migrate their services to a new platform, one that doesn't have your company's name on it. I hung up before he could respond. At 4:22 p.m., I received a PDF via email. Amended service agreement between Horizon Analytics and Castellano Systems. I read every word. Operational authority. Confirmed in writing, with specific language that any future changes required mutual written consent and 30 days notice. Licensing fee, $425,000 annually, plus maintenance and support fees tied to usage metrics. Contract term, 5 years with automatic renewal unless either party provided notice. Section 7.4 Amendments, strengthened language around restricted mode triggers and restoration protocols. The final page had 2 signatures, Richard Hoffman and the board chair. Below that, a separate letter on company letterhead. To Trevor Castellano, Horizon Analytics acknowledges that the transition announcement made on date did not adequately reflect your ongoing role and authority. We regret any misunderstanding this may have caused. Your contributions to this organization have been essential to our success, and we look forward to our continued partnership. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was on record. I opened the admin console, clicked Restore Full Access, confirmed. Within 90 seconds, every system came back online. Processing queues resumed, dashboards refreshed, client portals lit back up. I sent a one-line email to Richard, platform restored, terms accepted. The internal announcement went out the next morning. After productive discussions with Trevor Castellano and Castellano Systems, we're pleased to confirm that Trevor will continue as Chief Systems Architect with full operational authority over the Horizon Analytics platform. Kyle Hoffman will focus on business development and strategic partnerships in his role as VP of Growth Strategy. We're grateful for the collaboration and alignment that makes our continued success possible. Diane forwarded it to me with a single word. Good, Joel from Infrastructure sent. I don't know what you did, but thank you for not letting them break everything. Kyle sent nothing. Richard sent a calendar invitation for a partnership check-in in 2 weeks. I accepted, but I didn't forget. 3 months later, Kyle left Horizon Analytics to pursue other ventures. The press release thanked him for his strategic contributions. No one asked him to stay. 6 months after that, Richard called me about a potential acquisition offer from a larger firm. They want to know about platform stability and technical risk, he said. I'll need you on the due diligence calls. Happy to, I said. My rate for acquisition consulting is separate from the licensing agreement. How much? $25,000 for the engagement. He didn't even negotiate. The acquisition went through. Horizon Analytics sold for $340 million. Under the terms of the sale, Castellano Systems retained the platform license. The acquiring company could either continue licensing from me or rebuild from scratch. They chose to continue the license at a higher rate. 1 year after the anniversary event, I was sitting in my home office when I got an email from Richard's personal account. No subject line, just 2 sentences. I was wrong about your value. I'm sorry. I didn't reply right away. I opened my wallet and pulled out the $50 bill, still folded, still crisp. I took a photo of it next to my laptop where the Castellano Systems admin console showed the platform status, active. Revenue $847K annually. Clients 47. Uptime 99.97%. I replied to Richard with just the photo, no text. He never responded, but he never forgot either. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this. Your value isn't determined by what someone offers you in a moment of dismissal. It's determined by what breaks when you're not there to hold it together. Titles can be given to anyone. Authority means nothing without the knowledge to use it. And leverage, real leverage, isn't loud or dramatic. It's a contract clause you wrote when you were thinking 3 moves ahead. It's a system you built so well that no one else knows how to run it. It's the moment you stop being grateful for scraps and start enforcing terms that reflect your actual worth. The next time someone hands you $50 and tells you that's your value, smile, take it, and walk away. Then wait for morning, because that's when they'll learn what you were actually worth. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.